Welcome back to our series on clothing from Roman era Palmyra. In this video, we're looking at women's headwear. So, a brief reminder on the clothing of women. The headwear is a really distinctive feature because there's usually a veil worn over a turban, a diadem, or both. We see a tunic with either narrow sleeves or a bag tunic, or occasionally with wide sleeves, a mantle fastened on the left with a brooch, and often a lot of jewellery. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at the range of headwear, the different components of it, and talk about some of the significance of these. Now, it is rare to find women with just their hair depicted. When it is in an ornate hairstyle. And there's an article which is talking about this where they say that they think that these are young unmarried women. In this example, we can see she's got a really ornate hairstyle, but her clothing itself is fairly simple. It's undecorated, we can't see jewellery, and in her hand she has a bird. In this picture, we have a pair of people in the sculpture. The woman on the left is in mourning, and we can tell that because her breast is uncovered. She then has her mantle draped over her head. So it's actually her mantle pulled up over her hair. And she is probably mourning for the man depicted on the right because the picture shows her with her hands on his shoulders. And he would have been a priest, which we can tell from his headdress and the belt that he's wearing. A really common feature are turbans. And we can tell this because we look for things like the folds in the fabric, and this point here we often see that the turban is actually twisted on itself. Now, I haven't come across any surviving turbans from Palmyra, but there are several surviving turbans from Egypt. And so I'm assuming that the Palmyrene ones are similar to these. So this one, it's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it's made from a rectangle of fabric. At one end, the fabric is gathered here, and the head would go here, and then the rest of the fabric is cut into two tails, and those tails would be wrapped around the head, and then they can be twisted over each other to give that little twist at the front that we saw in the previous picture. There are similar versions made using the technique of sprang, and these are also in the Met, and they're really cool. I like sprang. I'm a little biased there. So when we know what to look for, we'll see that quite a lot of the sculptures, we have fabric around the top of the head like this. So either they will see a little twist in the center. In this sculpture, it looks like there's not that central twist, but the turban is wrapped around the head. In this one, we can see that it's like those two long parts of the turban have been twisted around each other. Yeah. We often see the turban combined with a diadem. Now, I haven't come across any surviving diadems from Palmyra. They appear to be made from metal because a lot of them still have fragments of that paint which we can see here that looks like there's a goldy coloured paint on here. We see similar on her jewellery here. So we're going to assume that the diadem's made from metal, and then above that we have a turban and a veil. Here we can see the diadem, and we can see it's got a little pattern in it here, shown in the sculpture. And then on top of it, we have that turban with a twist here, and then the veil. Now, this is not from Palmyra. This is a Roman sculpture from Italy. And I've included this because it does show us a way that the diadems could have been held on. So we can see that looks like a band with stones on it, and then it is held on at the back of the head with a cord. And that would allow for it to be adjusted for different head sizes. This is from the Romano-Germanic Museum in Cologne in Germany, and it is a diadem that is like open at the back here, so it would have been adjustable, and it's like a metal with gemstones mounted on it. This is actually from earlier than Palmyra in the Roman era. So this is from the 2nd century BC, but shows us another way that that diadem could have been constructed. So here we have a flexible gold band with mounts at either end which have gemstones, and then a loop attached to that, so you could then attach a cord and use that to hold it onto the head. These are Greek examples, and again they are earlier than Roman era. So the top one, we can see it's gold and it's got these little floral rosettes on it, and it's open at the back and could have been closed with a string. The bottom one is metal, and we can see it's got a different shape. It curves up in the middle, and then it has cameo, it has leaf shapes, it has gemstones, it has dangly bits. The top one here is of interest because in the sculptures from Palmyra, we can see patterns in the sculpture. So possibly they were like this example. And this one is later. So you notice I've got surviving ones from before, from other areas, from later, none from Palmyra itself, sorry. So this is a Byzantine one, and we can see that it's been constructed from metal, and they're like little plaques which are hinged to make it flexible to go around the head. And then it has gemstones in the center of each plaque. So in this picture, we can see a diadem, a turban, and a veil. And if we look closely, you can see that there is a pattern depicted on the diadem. So we've got a little 4-petaled flower in the middle, and then some textured bits either side. Then maybe another flower bit here. Here we have a diadem, a turban, a veil, and some dangly bits. Again, the diadem has a pattern to it. We can see that looks like a flower in the center, and then some little dots either side of it. The parts which are here look like it could be a necklace that has been suspended from the diadem. And we have a similar picture here, a diadem, turban, veil, and we have some beads or something suspended from the diadem looping back behind the head. We're going to finish by looking at fancy headwear where they have everything on them. So this is obviously a fairly wealthy woman. She's wearing a series of necklaces, she's got bracelets, she's got earrings, but her headwear, it's got a lot going on. If we look at the Beauty of Palmyra sculpture and the digital reconstruction showing the colours, we can see that it's a bit similar. It's got a lot going on. And this section in here had purpley coloured paint on it. So probably that part there was fabric. It's covered then with a number of pieces of jewellery, and we have the turban above, which is a goldy yellow colour. It actually looks the same colour as the jewellery, which I'm raising an eyebrow at, and covered with a red veil. In this picture, we can see a woman where she's got a simpler version. She is wearing what could be a diadem, but it is much larger and it's got that curvature to it. And we can look at the pattern on it. We can see that it's got a rosette in the center and then like textured grid around it. My question is this a metal object, a metal hairpiece, or is it cloth? It's feasible that this is a cloth one because the patterns depicted on it are similar to some of the patterns we see, for example, in the tapestry woven bands on tunics, and because it would be harder to produce such a large item out of metal, and because the Beauty of Palmyra, that part is depicted in that purpley colour. However, it could be metal. I don't know. What we do have though is that base, which in that more complicated one, we can see the base section under here. We can see then that she's got a brooch or two brooches here with some dangling pendants, and then necklace portions suspended coming down here. So it's multiple layers, and she's got a lot of her jewellery being worn on her head, and the whole thing covered by her veil. So what we can see is that there's a really big variety. Now, all the women we're seeing are of a fairly high social class because otherwise they wouldn't have tombs, they wouldn't have sculptures. But within that, we are still seeing a lot of variety and some having a lot more ornate jewellery, more layers, more details than others. We're going to look more at the jewellery in other videos. Thank you.